They are not taught about the Palestinian and the conflict. There is no conflict. There is no occupation. There are no Palestinians. The whole country is ours and we inhabit it. They don't exist. But they do learn that anti-Semitism is worldwide, that anyone who is not Jewish is a Jew hater, that we must keep a Jewish majority. So, non-Jewish minorities will not grow and become genocidal.
Welcome back to SoulCube Analytics, where we dive into the pressing issues shaping our world today. I'm your host Thomas Karat, and in this episode we have the distinct honor of speaking again with Professor Nurit Peled-Elhanan. Imagine this: you're a child sitting in a classroom flipping through history books filled with horrific images of concentration camps, executions, starvation, mass graves, and the faces of your own ancestors etched in terror. The Holocaust is everywhere. It's not just history, it's personal. It's drilled into your identity. But here's the twist. This fear, this existential terror you're being taught, isn't focused on the Germans anymore. No, the mortal threat you are being told to fear comes from much closer to home. It comes from your Arab neighbors, the ones Israel's leaders today call Nazis, because nothing fuels unquestioning violence like the terror of reliving the darkest chapters in Jewish history. Except this time, you're not the victim, you are the soldier trained to see the face of every Arab as that of a new Nazi, making it all too easy to pull the trigger without ever asking why. This is the world that Nurit lives in, Israel, and the world she now exposes for the insidious way it shapes young minds. As a mother who lost her daughter to a Palestinian suicide attack, she could have easily joined the chorus of hate. But she didn't. Instead, she asked the hard questions. Why do we grow up fearing, hating, and dehumanizing the people living just beyond the wall? How does a nation use the trauma of its own past to fuel its future wars? In her research, Nurit lifts the veil on how Israel's education system uses the legacy of the Holocaust not as a lesson in preventing it, but as a tool to justify it. The Holocaust is invoked constantly, not just to remind Israeli children of their history, but to embed in them a relentless fear, not of the Germans, but of the Arabs. And this fear shapes them. It primes them for military service. It primes them to see Palestinians not as human beings, but as existential threat. Think about it. By the time these children grow up and put on a uniform, they've been conditioned to see every Palestinian face as a danger, every protest as an act of war, every stone thrown by a child as a bullet fired. And the results? Soldiers who carry out orders in Gaza and the West Bank without ever questioning why they're doing it, without ever seeing the human beings on the other side. But Nurit's groundbreaking work doesn't stop at what's taught in textbooks. It goes deeper into the psyche of a nation at war with itself. She shows us how Holocaust trauma is wielded like a weapon in the classroom, planting seeds of fear that grow into acts of violence. She shows us how the story of the Jewish people's survival has been twisted into a narrative that justifies occupation, brutality, and yes, war crimes. In this interview, we are going to unpack all of it. We will be digging deep into how Israeli children are shaped from basically day one to fear and hate, and how this conditioning evolves into the very acts of violence we see in Gaza today. We will be asking the uncomfortable question: how does a history of oppression become a blueprint for perpetuating it? But before we do, a quick call to action. Some of the best interviews on this channel are shadow banned, which means YouTube is not presenting them to you, the viewer. The latest example is my interview with James Bamford, where we discussed the truly amazing story that underlies Benjamin Netanyahu's corruption scandal. Did you know that a Hollywood billionaire not only stole nuclear secrets from America, but then sold them to Israel? and that Netanyahu helped him to stay out of troubles to this very day. And then Netanyahu turned around and started to ask for favors, hence the bribery charges in Israel against him. Other examples are the interviews with the so-called Hamas lawyer Stanley Cohen, or the interview with the former chief of staff of Colin Powell, who told me that the white powder in the test tube that Colin Powell showed the world when he testified at the UN just before the war on Iraq was actually salt. So if you're interested in content that apparently you're not supposed to see, content that goes against the mainstream narrative, have a look at some of the previous interviews that we have recorded for your pleasure. And of course, it really helps to spread the news if you like and subscribe to this channel. Nurit Peled-Elhanan, actually Professor Nurit Peled-Elhanan. I hardly dare to ask, how are you?
Fine.
Fine. You're understating as always. Yeah. For our viewers, you were kind enough to speak to me the second time. The first time, and I just looked, was in February this year. The interview with you from the February did incredibly well. I mean, for such a small channel and for such a niche topic, yeah, you had more than 30,000 views. Yeah, you have literally hundreds of comments on in the comment section of the. Yeah. Now, the reason why I've asked you a second time is because in the first time, we covered more general topics, right? For example, your family. You come from a very, very, how shall I say this, interesting and involved family, involved in the history, in the making actually, of the State of Israel. Yeah? And this time, I would really like to focus on your work, right? Now, maybe I give it right away to you with my first question. In a nutshell, and without going into too much detail, how would you encapsulate the core of your work? What is it exactly that you are doing that makes your work so important and interesting?
I studied the discourse of education, of Israeli education.
Okay, but you do a very specific thing, yeah?
I did a lot of things. I mean, I studied many aspects of this course, a language, written and oral language development at school, classroom discourse, and then I discovered the racism in classroom discourse, especially towards Ethiopian children. And so I did about that. And then second language, things like that. And then I started with the school books. So I started to study the discourse of science, which is at the base of educational discourse. And then I discovered the racism in the school books. So this is my current, my last two books are about that.
Yeah. And if anyone wonders how this relates to what's happening today, how would you answer this question? Because there's a clear. I think I asked you this question in the first time around, and maybe I should be more specific because last time I wasn't there. So my take on this is that the indoctrination of Israeli children from early age on, from early life on, has a correlation to what we see today in Gaza, right? And I think you slightly disagreed when I said it the last time.
Yeah, because this is only part of the education. Yep. Education is much larger. You have a whole culture of xenophobia, of heterophobia, of terrible fear of others, of traumatization through Holocaust education, which is my last book. So all these together, form, and of course the idealization of being soldiers. All this together maybe amounts to what you see today in Gaza. So textbooks are only part of it.
Yeah. So you looked at the indoctrination that happens from within the classroom. Yeah. So
no indoctrination. I never used this word.
Okay.
I looked at when I studied textbooks, I looked at the representation of what is called others in Israeli school books, because in Israel we have Israeliness was constituted against three groups of others. The first one was diaspora Jews, East European Jews, who were weak and feeble and studious and spiritual and no muscles. Zionism wanted Jews with muscles, so they were despised, especially when they perished in the Holocaust. The first Prime Minister, Ben-Gurion, despised them. He said, you can call me anti-Semitic, but I don't want anything to do with these Jews. I'm ashamed of them, and so on. And this set the tone of the, attitude towards them, East European Jews who perished like, sheep to the slaughter and so on. So this was the first group before the Holocaust, but also after. And the second group are the Arabs who were assigned the role of our potential exterminators after Israel befriended the other Germany. So again, Ben-Gurion said that he's accepting the reparation money from Germany in order to protect the country from the Nazi Arabs, and that set the tone against them. And the third group is the non-European Jews who were brought to Israel by the state to replace the Jews for whom the country was meant to be and were exterminated. But these Jews from Arab countries mostly and African countries were not accepted as they are. They only wanted them bodily. To maintain some kind of majority within the borders, but they had to give up their culture, the language, their religious customs, everything. So these are the three groups of others against whom Israeliness is constituted, and we must ask, who are these Israelis? It doesn't leave too many. But so this is what I wanted to see, how these groups are represented in school books. My first book was solely about Palestinians, but my second book was about the three groups and the connection between representation of Holocaust victims and the representation of the others. Okay, because there is a connection between them.
Okay.
And but I never speak about indoctrination, because in order to speak about indoctrination, you have to study the indoctrinated. And I never studied that. You can see here and there, but for example, in the testimonies of soldiers from breaking the silence, they always say that I was brought up to think that whatever I do to the Palestinians will save us from another Holocaust. Okay? So here you see indoctrination.
If we look at the Palestinians as our group to be examined, yeah. So, and I'm getting more careful, yeah. So, in your research, you have shown that Palestinian identity is systematically erased and demonized in Israeli textbooks. Now, how early do these lessons begin, as far as you can tell, yeah? And how deeply are they ingrained? Again, I need to be mindful about the semantics, yeah? How deeply are they ingrained in the minds of young Israeli children?
They don't exist. Palestinians don't exist in Israeli consciousness or in Israeli discourse or in Israeli textbooks today. They're not there. There is a very abstract notion of terror, threat, problem to be solved, etc. But the people themselves are not narrated. The people themselves are not represented. They are not discussed. Nobody sees them. Israelis don't see Palestinians until they become soldiers, really. They don't see them. They don't have anything to do with them. And they don't think about them.
And I think even, again, I believe it was your brother who told me that he saw the first Palestinian when he was like 25 or something like that.
No, when he was a soldier.
Or when it, yeah. Okay, yeah. Now, what are some, as far if you have some ready, yeah? So what are some examples of the most dangerous biases or ideological manipulations, again semantics, that the general public might completely be unaware of when it comes to how Israeli children are taught about the Palestinian and the conflict?
They are not taught about the Palestinian and the conflict. There is no conflict. There is no occupation. There are no Palestinians. The whole country is ours and we inhabit it. They don't exist. But they do learn that anti-Semitism is worldwide, that anyone who is not Jewish is a Jew hater, that we must keep a Jewish majority. So, non-Jewish minorities will not grow and become genocidal. That we should never trust anybody but ourselves, and so on and so forth. You see? It's not that they learn anything about the neighbors. They only learn that the neighbors, very abstractly, are dangerous. That's all.
I recall that you said the Arabs are only portrayed as dirty and on donkeys, whilst the
Yes,
Israeli portrayal in the school books is like this pristine, Swiss village, everything is clean and so on. That's
it
what I
was.
recall.
Because my book, the first book you're talking about, is only until 2009. Today it's different. They don't exist at all. But in the 90s and beginning of 2000, there was an attempt to talk about them. Okay? And they talked about the Palestinians and about the PLO a little bit and about the Palestinian citizens. Now, the Palestinian citizens were presented as a demographic threat because they multiply so much, and as a developmental burden, okay, because they are primitive by nature. This is some kind of racialization. They were treated like a race that never changes, okay? They don't like modernity, they don't want to be developed, and so on and so forth. But then they disappeared altogether from the school books. And there's one school book I talked about from 2003 that whenever they talked about the Arab, they don't say Palestinians ever, Arab citizens of Israel, the visual was a racist icon of some kind of Alibaba with a camel.
I make it very black and white, yeah, on purpose, yeah. But would you say that the Israeli education system functions as a kind of mechanism for brainwashing young children into accepting a permanent state of conflict?
Yeah,
I mean, as adults.
of course, of course. They have to carry on, at the age of 18, they have to go and carry on this regime of occupation. So, of course.
So the complete omission of Palestinians from Israeli school books is in itself already a type of manipulation. Sorry,
Yeah.
manipulation. Yeah. What other mechanisms
The
to
thing, sorry, yeah.
no? What other mechanisms are there? Yeah.
The thing, I mean, the ideal of Zionism and then of the state of Israel was to westernize ourselves, okay? To be rid of the East, of the Eastern European Jew, of the Eastern Arab Jew, and so on and so forth. And the erasure of Palestine was also its erasure from the East and its acceptance into the West. So we are a Western country, and everything that's Eastern or Oriental is erased. Okay, so it's not only the Palestinians, it's also the history, the very long history of Jews in Eastern Europe and in Muslim countries and in Ethiopia. It's all erased. I mean, history started with Zionism. History starts when you come to Israel. Before that, nothing happened, nothing is important. We don't know anything really. We don't learn anything. For example, almost nothing about the Turks who were here for hundreds of years. So this is the idea, to westernize the place.
I interviewed Professor Abi Schleim,
Ah,
who is not only a historian himself, but he's also an Arab Jew, yeah, coming from Iraq, and
yeah, okay.
he told the story that, he and his family were lucky, but most of the others were not really received well in Israel.
No, they
Quite,
were not received well. They were
quite the contrary.
disinfected.
Yeah.
They were pushed to the margins of society and to the margins of the country, to the frontier.
They were dispossessed with a secret deal between Iraq
Yes,
and Israel.
yes, all of them, Yemen, Morocco, all of them. But to this day, I mean, almost 4 generations after, they and their grandchildren and great-grandchildren are still discriminated, There's a new study that just came out and shows that the discrimination and the gap is getting bigger and not smaller.
That leads me to a question that's not on my list here. I've interviewed multiple people who said that basically Israel is a democracy for a real democracy, yeah? Also for the Arab Jews within Israel. Yeah.
It's not a real democracy for the Arab Jews because they had to give up so much in order to be accepted, and they're still not accepted. I'll give you one example. When in literature studies in school, where they study an Arab Jewish writer, even if he was born in Israel, but his parents were from, they call it Oriental literature, Mizrahi literature. Even Sami Michael, who is one of the greatest authors in Israel and was the head of the human rights organization in Israel and so on, it was an important man and a wonderful author. He is under the rubric of Oriental literature. And there's another one, Nurit Peled-Elhanan, who was born in Israel and she is Israeli. She is under this rubric. But when they study an author that came from Germany, they don't say a German or a European author. No, they say Israeli, because this is the unmarked. This is the Israeli. So it's amazing, really. They are still ethnicities. Now, all the Jews who came not from Europe are gathered under one label, Orientals. You can, from India to Yemen, they are all the same. And I don't know if you know, there is a very famous photograph of Meir Gal, a photographer, where he holds 9 pages from a book of 400 pages, and it says, "This is all you get, the West and the rest." So all these people who came from so many countries and lived a very rich and harmonious life for hundreds, thousands of years, all of them together don't get more than 9 pages in a history book of 400. So it's still going on. Not to speak about the Ethiopians who don't get anything.
Yeah. I wasn't aware of this photograph, but I was aware, of course.
Meir Gal, just note
I
down.
will,
Meir Gal, 9 out of 400.
yeah,
The rest, the West and the rest, he calls it.
I will look it up. Yeah, but I was aware, of course, of the split between the Sephardic and Ashkenazi Jews, right? And the split in the society where we saw the Jews from European descent being the majority, in for example in the High Court and these kind of things.
Yeah. That's what I said. Discrimination and the gap is getting bigger, and not smaller.
Yeah. But
in the army, in the university, everywhere, in the market, and there are many, videos that are done by sociologists and so on, where the same job is offered to everyone, and the Ashkenazi guy gets it, and the Mizrahi guy doesn't get it, and so on. Even today, the Ashkenazi are not the majority anymore.
That's the thing.
No.
Exactly. There's a demographic change, which may have to do, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the Orthodox Jews are involved here because how was it? No, I'm mixing two things up now. So the Orthodox, there's also a shift because recently there were I don't know if it's now mandatory or not, but there are really serious discussions to include them in the military, which they refuse. They get a lot of children. They live from the
Yeah, but
state. So that's one group. That's one group.
no,
Yeah,
but
and
that's another story altogether.
yeah,
Because
and
they
then
don't compete in the market. You see, they don't work.
because they don't work.
Yeah,
Yes,
they study.
yes. But we talk about. I fully agree. But
The
the
women work.
the
The women work.
But there is a this is one part of the demographic shift that happens, which undermines the majority of the Jews of the European descent. And the other group is the ones that we just discussed, the Arab Jews, right? Both, so the Orthodox Jews and the Arab Jews get many more children than the Jews from European
No, not
descent.
anymore. Arab Jews are just like anybody else. I mean, they came with a lot of children, and you probably know the story of the kidnapping of Yemenite children and so on. They came with a lot of children, but today the young ones, no. I mean, they're just like everybody else. But for the Orthodox, it's an ideal to have many children. And even the Arabs, they say they multiply so much. It's not true anymore. I mean,
I interviewed Dan Perry from the Associated Press
yeah.
a week ago, yeah, and he said they get 7 children on average per family.
Where the ultra Orthodox.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. I once
Okay.
had a student who was a teacher with me when I taught high school. And then she came to university and she came to my course. And so we asked her, how are you? How are you? How many children you have? How many children you have? And I said, I have 4 children. And she said, well, in your sector, I believe it is something. She had 8. In her sector, even 8 is not enough. Yeah.
Okay. Coming back to the topic of our interview here, yeah. From children to soldiers, yeah. Once the children, yeah, which on my tongue and in my mind is still the word indoctrination, because somehow for me it feels like some type of indoctrination, but I fully accept what you said, yeah. But once these children grow into young adults, yeah, and serve in the military, how do the ideas that they learned in school translate into real world violence, which we are seeing today, yeah? How does the psychological groundwork that they kind of pick up in school, yeah, in early childhood,
Well, it's
evolve when these individuals are put in positions of power, like we're seeing them
You can ask that
having now
about
in.
all the soldiers in the world, American, European, Russian, Ukrainian, Czechoslovakian. They're all
Yes,
the
to
same. I
some
mean,
extent,
a soldier
yes,
is a
I
soldier,
completely.
and that's what they do, and that's horrible. There are
Yeah,
many,
but there's a
there are
difference.
very few cases of refusal everywhere in the world. Everywhere in the world. Americans in Iraq, British in Iraq, uh, Russians, and so on. Very few. I mean, this process of soldiering is very, very it's really taming. It's not, it's taming. And once you're tamed, you do what you have to do. Some of them do it happily, yes. But some of them say, well, yeah, there are people who know much more than me, and the one above, they know what they're doing. And some of them, they just want to get home.
I would argue that there's a real difference between Israel and, let's say, the United States or even Russia. Yeah? With the exceptions of the Orthodox Jews in Israel, almost everybody is in the army. Yeah.
Yeah, right. In America, they take only the poor ones. Yes, in Israel, everybody goes to the army. Yes, and it becomes an ideal, you see, an ideal to be a warrior, to be a fighter, to be a combatant. Yes, this is really indoctrination because they do it from very early age, from kindergarten, and it's very hard to fight that. Very hard. It was hard for me to fight it in my children. But yes, this is one of the strongest. I mean, this is one of the great victories of Israeli education. That to be a combatant, to be a fighter, and those who refuse after that, after being in the army for a while, and they realize what they are doing, and they refuse, like my children did. It's a very tough process of disillusionment to realize what it's really all about. It's not about protecting your country. It's not about defending people. It's about something else. but only few of them realize that. The others just don't.
My next question kind of is almost self-explanatory. Yeah? So are there psychological mechanisms that you believe are intentionally designed to desensitize,
I don't
let's
know.
say,
As I told you, all the soldiers in the world do that. I mean, Americans went to the other side of the world to do that. Why? I mean, in Israel, you can say it's too close. It's so close that maybe really the threat is near. The threat is felt in every house. But Iraq, what do they have to do there? Why? And they go, not only for the money.
also
They have
Iraq?
some kind of ideologization and self-indoctrination that they are doing the good thing, the right thing. And I don't know, but a soldier is a soldier everywhere. That's the point.
Also Iraq is an extreme example, yeah, but a very fitting one, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't know anything about the place. They didn't know anything about why they're going, but they went to save America. Save America. I mean, or Vietnam, etc. You know, all these things.
The soldiers, also some of the soldiers in Iraq, engraved the Twin Towers and the Pentagon on their
Yeah,
on their helmets.
yeah,
This shows the extent to which they were indeed indoctrinated.
yeah,
Although President Bush later said, I never said Saddam Hussein had anything to do with 9/11.
yeah, yeah.
But the soldiers definitely believed it, and as a consequence, were as brutal and as
Even
destructive
if he
as
had,
they were.
so what?
But he did.
Never
He
mind.
indicated.
Even if he had, you don't go and kill thousands of people
Ah, okay.
just for that. I mean, there are other ways.
It comes from the top leadership. So the key moment for me was when Madeleine Albright said on live television she found it justified that 500,000 Iraqi children were starved to death between the first and the second war in Iraq. Yeah? If that happened to America from any other nation, yeah, we would have had the Third World War already. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that also shows something about the indoctrination again of the American population. This is coming from the top leadership. Yeah. And another example, I interviewed Colonel Larry Wilkerson, who was the chief of staff of Colin Powell. Yeah. And I'm sure you remember this iconic image where Colin Powell in the UN showed this glass tube with the white powder saying that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Yeah. Larry Wilkerson told me that in that test tube was actually salt. Yeah. So, I mean, of course, they will not take a dangerous substance into the UN. Yeah. But nevertheless, it was the epitome of not only deception but also indoctrination.
Yeah, that's how we live.
Yeah. Yeah. So, again, from your from your research. Yeah. What other mechanisms or strategies are being used to cultivate generation after generation after generation of Israelis? I don't want to say child soldiers because they are not. Although I mean, we both know that the neocortex develops at least till 21, 23. So if someone goes into the war, like in Vietnam, average age was 19. They go into the war without having the full mental capacity yet. So in Israel, they go when in the army? With what age?
18.
18, same thing. Yeah.
Well, I
So
think
what other?
the main thing is Holocaust education. Holocaust is the main component of Israeli identity. It's more than Zionism. It's more than anything else. Judaism. It's the Holocaust, and this is um, entrenched into them from a very early age in a horrible way. I mean, they are being traumatized year after year after year with the most horrendous photographs and stories and reports about sadism and perversion and the extermination and so on. And nobody ever studied what the effect is. But I'm sure it creates heterophobic people. Susan Sontag writes that she accidentally came across a Holocaust photograph when she was 12, and she said, my life is divided to before and after. Can you imagine an Israeli child from the age of 3 and 4 fed with these stories and these horrible, horrible photographs? So this is the main thing. And the rationale for this education was after the 73 setback war of Israel. Many people started leaving the country, many young people. They said, okay, this is not for me. And the idea was to find something that will force them to stay and be loyal to the state. So how do you do that? You frighten them to death, okay, by the Gentiles. And this is the main message of Holocaust education. It happened to the Jews because they did not have a state and an army. That's it. From very young age, from kindergarten. And I believe that this traumatization and re-traumatization for so many years does something to you. Although I haven't seen a research that really examines it, but there are books. Noam Chayut wrote a wonderful book, The Girl Who Stole My Holocaust. Avram Burg wrote, to beat Hitler and so on. Many people wrote about this, what it did to them. So I don't think you can become normal after that. It's not me saying that. It's people, more into the subject than me, like Professor Hannah Yablonka. She says we teach them that we are victims, nothing else. We teach them the pornography of evil year after year after year. What do you expect after that? What kind of people? Okay, and this fear, this horror, is ingrained. You don't get rid of it ever, ever. On one hand, these victims are shown in the most contemptuous way: naked, abused, wounded, dead, skeletons. You have it in school books. So this is like disrespect for the dead, terrible disrespect for the dead. And also, you can say that when you show naked children, there's a law against child pornography. But the law does not apply to Holocaust victims. Why not? So on one hand, they're shown in this demeaning way. And from a Nazi point of view, because all the photographs are taken from Nazi archives, so this Nazi perspective of the Jews come through as factual, as objective. On the other hand, it's a horrible, it's a worst process of traumatization. And the idea is that if we are not alert, it will happen again. It's hovering above us all the time. It's imminent. But it will come from the hands of the Arabs, the Nazi Arabs. Even now in Gaza, you see the president, the prime minister, everybody calls the Gazans Nazis. Hamas are Nazis. Everybody's Nazi. And this is not, it is not by mistake. Because if they are Nazis, you have to treat them like Nazis and bombard them like Churchill bombarded Dresden and so on. But also, when you say they're Nazis, then the threat is so frightening that you'll do everything to get rid of it. Everything. So this is the main thing, the Holocaust education. And high people in the Ministry of Education said that to punch them in the guts. Okay, so the fire of revenge will not die out, but the revenge is not against the Germans and the European collaborators, but against the subjugated, rightless, starved Palestinians who are suddenly have the image of almighty Nazis. Okay? So I think this is the main thing.
You said a couple of things. Yes, and I observed the shift in language from the beginning. Also, right after October the 7th, it was ISIS. Yeah, Netanyahu.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then after, I don't know, a couple of weeks, it changed indeed to Nazis.
Nazis,
yeah?
Nazis.
Which indicates that that's a conscious strategy. Yeah, they're
Yes,
trying
of
to
course.
maximize. Yeah. To maximize on what they already have indoctrinated.
Yes, and soldiers saying we are going to get the Nazis and so on. They don't even know, most of them, I believe, who the Nazis were, but it's the same, you know.
So I think that's one of the reasons why what happened October the 7th, and I think we can agree, I spoke with a number of subject matter experts on this topic, it really went to, I don't want to say the subconscious, but it really went to the core of Jewishness, this attack from October the 7th, because it's kind of a self-fulfilling, but a fulfilling prophecy, right? They want to get us, right?
No, it's also, they didn't do it because of the siege. They didn't do it because they were starved by us. They didn't do it because we destroyed their water system and they saw the swimming pools and the sprinkles in the kibbutzim. No, they did it because we're Jewish. And everybody accepts that. You see, they are the Third Reich. Okay, these starved boys who came to rape and kill, and I mean that they were crazy, that they were horrible. But the context, they take it out of context. They do it also in the books and in matriculation exams. They give you a list of terrorist attacks by Palestinians without context. And they say these attacks made Israelis identify with Holocaust survivors. And then they ask about it in the matriculation exam. Choose one event and say how this event made Israelis identify with Holocaust survivors. And this is in a chapter that is called The Formation of Holocaust Remembrance. So all you have there are these, Palestinian terrorist attacks without context. And they did it because we are Jewish. That's all. And then our Jewishness, the vulnerability and the weakness, etc., came to. Also during the Gulf War, everybody was sure we are new Shoah. Yeah, this is it. This is the main factor.
And it's not only Israelis, yeah. So right after October the 7th,
yeah, everybody falls into the trap, of course.
Yeah. Every interview that I saw in the first, virtually every single interview started with the question, what do you think about October the 7th? Yeah, like if there's no prehistory, yeah, and then of course Guterres, UN General Secretary, was heavily criticized. Yeah, he was even requested to step down for his comments that October the 7th did not happen in a vacuum. Right?
Yeah, it's very hard for people, and of course Israel is, and the IRA definition of anti-Semitism and so on, it all helps. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you briefly want to explain. So IRA has presented how shall I say it, a very interpretable definition of
anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism and anti-Israel is the same thing. So if you criticize Israel, you're anti-Semitic, and it works.
That's the question that I'm asking myself. Yeah, I mean, you can call an apple an orange as often as you like. But the apple will never become an orange. It will always stay an apple. So you can conflate anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism, but
everybody does. The German government does. The American government does. American universities do. In Holland they do. In England they do. Everywhere in France.
Yeah, but this is top down. I completely get the strategy, because with that strategy you stifle any valid critic against the state of Israel. I completely understand why the leadership who are pro-Israel do that. Yeah, but that's why I say it's top down. But the people I'm talking with, yeah, they don't take it.
They don't count. for the
They don't.
moment.
Yes, yes. Okay. When we go into, so out of the classroom and direction, media, culture, and the reinforcement of militarism, yeah. Textbooks, and you said it already, yeah. So textbooks are just one piece of the puzzle, yeah. So how does the media, the Israeli media, perpetuate these ideas? I
Well,
mean,
Israeli media is
taking,
completely censored, self-censored.
I just wanted to say, taking into consideration that the military even has a very strong influence on the media by what was it? They provide trainings, they provide career paths from the military into the media. So the media is pretty much saturated with former logically because everybody almost goes into the army. Yeah.
Not because of that. I think the politicians, not the army.
Also, yeah, but politicians are also from the army.
Yeah, but no, today no. Most of them didn't go to the army.
Yeah, today the right wing government, true. Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
didn't
But in the
go to the
past, yeah,
army,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Either they weren't fit mentally or they weren't
yeah.
fit because they were criminals or they just they didn't go. But the media in Israel has always been censored all the time. We hear about our brave soldiers and so on and so forth. That's all. That's all.
Out of curiosity, because I interviewed Gideon Levy twice. Last time when the twin assassinations in Lebanon and in Iraq, sorry, in Iran happened. Yeah, but he works for the HRS. So what's your opinion in terms of being self-centered for a, I think liberal HRS is liberal in Israel. Again, I'm not an
The
expert on.
most, yeah, the most
Okay.
liberal. Yeah. But even there, you have a limit. So you have Gideon Levy. I mean, they have these stars who write their opinion, but not. Yeah, yeah. It's the most liberal. The others are completely bought.
Again, a question that I believe I know the answer, yeah. But there seems to be a national narrative, and we know that, yeah, built around this whole victimhood, survival, and the necessity of military actions, yeah, left and right, yeah.
Yeah, that comes
How
from the
that,
Holocaust. We are
yeah.
the hereditary victims, and we must arm ourselves to our teeth in order to survive.
But how far can this go? I mean, does it really prevent any critical thinking?
There is critical thinking, a bit, just a little bit. Yeah,
Where? Where?
I don't know, Gideon Levy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But not in the government. I mean, I should have said it actually at the beginning. Yeah. So we are recording this interview just, is it now 3 or 4 days? 3 or 4 days after this incredible Israeli attack on the Lebanon with on the first day 3,000 pages went off, and on the second day I don't know how many walkie-talkies and other electronic devices in Lebanon, supposedly all owned by Hamas, affiliated with Hamas. Yeah, and I think yesterday a massive bombardment of Israel onto Lebanon took place. I saw on videos huge explosions with huge mushroom clouds. Also, this is no longer a small, border dispute, shooting rockets left and right. Yeah.
Today there were rockets near my house.
Rockets from whom?
From Lebanon. Hundreds of
From
rockets.
Lebanon.
Hundreds of
Yeah.
rockets in the north of the country. Yeah. Everything is paralyzed. No school, nothing. Nobody leaves the house.
Yeah. I actually thought the north of the north of Israel is deserted. So 60,000 people have evacuated the zone,
The
also the
very
border
north.
region.
Now they came a bit more towards Haifa.
Oh,
And I
okay.
live between Akka and Haifa. So they bombarded this area because in this area you have Rafael, which is where they develop weaponry and so on. And you also have all kinds of other things. But they didn't hit Rafael, they hit residential areas. A few people died and many people are wounded and so on and so forth. Yeah, I'm not there now, but I live there.
And every bombardment of that sort gives, of course, Netanyahu and his right-wing government more ammunition to proceed the way they do. Yeah. I mean, I was always wondering, yeah, for people like you, with how shall I say this, with the knowledge that you have, yeah, and from my perspective, the objectivity that you look at the actual root cause of the issue, yeah, living in Israel, being actually bombarded from both sides. I mean, metaphorically speaking, bombarded from both sides, yeah. How do you cope with living in Israel, if I may ask?
I live in my house, you know.
Yeah. But you see the drama unfolding. You are so you're virtually in the midst of it. Yeah. You know the actual, as I said already, the causes, the real causes going back decades. Yeah. And we all see an escalation coming. Yeah. You know, how does anyone live like this? I mean, there are let's say the normal Israelis. They are to a certain extent indoctrinated. But then the people like you, or Gideon Levy, or Abi Schleim, or to name
Abishai
just a
doesn't live
few.
in Israel, but
That's true. He went to London. Yeah, yeah, I know.
um,
Yeah,
I don't think we matter. I think it's the simple people who lose their work, who lose their livelihood ever since October, who lost their homes, and nobody cares for them. Nobody cares for them. And there are hundreds of thousands of such people from the north and from the south who are just destitute completely. They have no house, no work, no livelihood, no school, nothing. These are the people to think about, and nobody helps them. It doesn't matter what they think about it, but they are the victims.
the Netanyahu, that what I heard that Netanyahu is using now to prepare war with Lebanon is to ensure that the 60,000 refugees from Israel's very north, can go back to the region before the winter. I know it's an argument. I mean, I know what the real reasons are. We will never know.
We know he wants the war to go on.
Yes, that's a very interesting one. So please tell us from your perspective, why
No,
do
no,
you
I
think?
won't go into it, but
Oh,
it's obvious. I think he wants the war to go on in order for the government not to fall and so on.
how long can he still do that? I mean, wherever I look, also, I mean, I stopped consuming news from our Western media bubble. Yeah, I go outside global south. Yeah, and wherever you go, everyone talks about this. Netanyahu has a self-interest, yeah, to stay out of jail to prolong this war. I mean,
That's
if
right.
if you really consider the depth of this tragedy, it's just incredible. That one, I mean, it's very easy to think, get rid of Netanyahu and you have solved the problem. No, yeah, that's not the case. Yeah, but there is certainly a self-interest, and again, the leader of the global South are very lucid about that fact. Only by us here in the Western media, yeah, 16% of the world population, where we get virtually the same news bits, sound bites, yeah, no matter in which language it's presented. Yeah, we're living in this bubble with totally deformed information, yeah, and I can imagine most and foremost in Israel too.
The point is that nobody can do anything. That's the point. People are being killed as we speak. Children are being killed and wounded and maimed as we speak, and nobody can do anything. Everybody talks and talks and talks. Nobody does anything to stop it.
But are there not again? I mean, renewed demonstrations against the government in Israel?
So what? So what? All the countries, in the world do nothing, just as they didn't do anything during the Holocaust. Same thing. Nobody does anything to stop it. Not America, not Europe, not the Arab countries. Nobody. Nobody does anything to stop it. And that's the main thing. I mean, people can talk from here to eternity.
Do you have any inclination why that is?
Maybe that's humanity. That's it. It happened so many times. That's humanity. Nobody does anything when it happens in Sudan. Nobody does anything when it happens in China. Nobody does anything when it happens in Africa and South America. No, this is humanity. This is human nature. I mean, you live your life. Sometimes you are shocked, sometimes you are there, but you don't really do anything. Nobody does anything. And the few who do, don't matter. That's
I
all.
think I think this time with Gaza, it's a bit, again, maybe I'm completely wrong, yeah, but I think it's a bit different because we have this virtually live streamed genocide. And again, I know using the word genocide is laden because you very quickly go into a semantic discussion. What is genocide and what is not?
No, it's
I have a
a
whole
judicial discussion. It's a legal discussion, whether it is or not genocide. But, one of the most important genocide scholars in the world, Amos Goldberg, wrote that it was a genocide. But legal people say you cannot call it genocide because you cannot prove intent. That's the point. But there is another word, sociocide, that Johann Galtung made up. And there you only have to look at the actions and not at the intent and the intention. So you can call it sociocide if you want. But it doesn't matter, you know.
I interviewed Emeritus Professor Martin Shaw just a week ago. His interview will be published coming Friday. And he said exactly what you said. It's the intent that counts, and you can prove intent.
I
Yeah?
don't say
And
that, but this is a definition.
yeah, okay, yeah.
This is the
I mean,
legal definition of genocide. You have to prove intent, and this is very hard. But if you talk about sociocide, you don't have. You just see the actions.
yeah, but
But they haven't accepted the sociocide.
yeah, but again, when we come back to Gaza, there are more and more arguments that we actually can prove intent based on the language used, on the genocidal language
Yes, but
used.
again, it's not, I don't know. You have to read the legal stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very hard to prove legally.
yeah. But what I wanted to say, so out of Gaza non-stop non-stop images of what you may or may not call genocide, yeah, with the tragedy that happens in Gaza, yeah? And these images, they go into people's subconscious. They can,
I don't know
you
where
know,
they go, but the people don't do anything about it.
I would agree there is very little
Very
change,
little action. Very
yeah,
little
but
action.
there was a recent Gallup study which showed that the younger people are, the more they support Palestine, and the
Everybody
older,
supports Palestine, but nobody stops the war. You see?
yes,
The
because the
supporting of Palestine is a European American thing. Nothing to do with Gaza, really. It's a moment. It's a moment, and it's a great moment, but it doesn't lead to any action by anyone, especially not by those who count. I mean, those who give the money and the weapons. Yeah, it's something that it's between themselves. Hamas was right, Hamas was wrong, Israel right, Israel wrong. I mean, it's kind of okay, but then it doesn't do anything. It doesn't help Gaza. Some people do. There are some doctors and so on, but it doesn't go to the right channels to stop the killing and to stop what is going on there. Nobody does.
as far as you can tell, in which direction are we going here with the situation in
Catastrophe.
Gaza and the situation in Lebanon? Where do we go
Disaster.
from here?
Disaster. A real disaster.
Now, I know that a majority and a growing number, I mean, it was already a high number of Israelis support what's happening in Gaza, and quite a surprisingly high percentage even think what's done is not enough in Gaza. Yeah.
Okay, because they are all heated up, but they could think differently if they were directed to think differently. If there was peace, they wouldn't remember what it was, what happened before. It was after Oslo, everybody forgot everything in 2 days, just went shopping, you know, in each other's shops. This is not, but there are many who don't support it. You see the demonstrations, but it doesn't matter. As long as you don't have the money and the weapons, it doesn't matter.
Gideon Levy said the demonstrations which are happening right now don't matter because the people who are demonstrating are anyway not voting for Netanyahu. So they can keep on demonstrating, and indeed it will not change anything.
Yeah. Even if there are 1 million, who cares? Who cares? It's not. We do it for ourselves. You know, you don't do it to change the world. You cannot. You do it for yourself, to tell yourself and your children that you are on the right side. But the Gazans are not being helped by that.
The Gazans are definitely not being helped, and it's the
By
time
anyone
is.
in the world. By anyone.
I mean, from a Western perspective, so the Palestinians, the word Palestinian and the word terrorism have so often been used, throughout the years. It almost has become synonymous.
Yeah. In Israel it is.
But
In
not
Israel
only
they
in
call
Israel.
them Arabs unless it's terror. Then they call them Palestinian terrorists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make it much easier for. I mean, again, this is a generational thing. Yeah, it's everywhere in the Western media. It's as long as I can remember. Yeah, it was always Palestinian terrorists, Palestinian terrorists. Yeah, that makes it easier for people to justify for themselves. Yeah, to kind of avoid this cognitive dissonance. Yeah, for seeing those images that we see in Gaza and then saying they're terrorists. Yeah, and then of course all of them are terrorists, right? There are, who said it? There are no innocents. Yeah, there are no innocents in Gaza. This kind of
I
things.
wrote.
Again,
We just have a volume of what we call language and society, and each writer had to take an expression, was given an expression to write about. You know, the language that developed after 7th of October, and my expression was uninvolved. So the whole idea of uninvolved is a rhetoric gimmick to prove they are not uninvolved. Because if you listen to the politicians and to the artists and singers and people in Israel, for them there are no uninvolved in Gaza. Even the children, they are seeds of Amalek. They are seeds of Amalek. They should be exterminated with all the others.
yeah. Now
Nobody
you brought
is
the term up,
uninvolved.
Amalek. You brought it up. Now you have to explain it. So Netanyahu used the term
Amalek is
Amalek.
the mythological, biblical enemy of Israel, and there is a commandment to remember what Amalek did to you and to exterminate Amalek and the seeds of Amalek. So everybody is Amalek, all the enemies of Israel.
Women, children, dogs, donkeys, kill everybody. That's Amalek.
Yes, everything. Yeah. And so he, he mentioned it because he knows what it does. Yeah. So they are all Amalek. I mean, the president said there are no uninvolved in Gaza. And there was this member of parliament. Her name is Merav Ben-Ari, and she's not identified with Bibi Netanyahu, but she said also the children brought it upon themselves. How can they, yeah.
I
So
tried to put myself into Gaza, which since 2006 is ruled by Hamas, right? Since then you have this siege, so you have a whole generation, a new generation of young people. They don't know anything else,
well,
but
those
this.
who committed the 7th of October are exactly these children. Plus, they were starved for years. Plus, they had no hope for anything, couldn't go anywhere, couldn't study, I mean, everything was restricted. And of course, this breeds hatred, and it breeds violence, and it breeds whatever we saw.
Are you aware of the location of this music festival that took place on
Nova,
October the 2nd?
yeah, it's a yearly thing. Every year they have
Yeah.
this.
How far is it away from the separation with Gaza? Do you know?
Now I can ask my husband. Wait.
Yeah.
רמי, נובה, כמה זה רחוק מהגבול? נובה, איפה שהיה הפסטיבל. 5 kilometers.
Okay. So theoretically, they could have heard it, right? From Gaza, they could have heard the music.
Of course they did. I mean, there's life there. There's good life there. And I told you, swimming pools and sprinkles, and they don't have clean water for how many years? It breeds hate. It breeds violence. It breeds the most horrendous things that we saw on the 7th of October.
And
Yeah.
we know also from studies, and this is true for any country, the most dangerous demographic group anywhere are young unmarried males up to, I think, between 16 and 23. Yeah, that's the most demographic, most risk-taking demography in any country.
Well, they are the soldiers from 18 to 21. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because they are very enthusiastic, they're very idealistic, they are full of
Malleable.
energy, they want to do something. And politicians take advantage of it.
Yeah. Can we briefly, yeah, can we briefly come back to you? Last time we spoke, you no longer work where you worked, right? So maybe you briefly want to outline what happened.
Oh,
I mean, I'm aiming on this because I have now interviewed a number of people who lost their jobs, were
I didn't lose my
silenced.
job, I quit.
I know. I
Okay.
didn't say you. I did specifically not say you lost your job. So that's why I invite you. Tell us what happened.
It's not so dramatic. I wrote in a closed WhatsApp group of the teachers of my college what I told you now. That 7th of October is the result of siege and so on. And I quoted Jean-Paul Sartre, where he said that after years and years that your heel is on his neck and you let him breathe and you let him look at you, what kind of look do you think you'll see in his eyes? And I wrote, this is the look we saw on 7th of October. And somebody snitched to the president, who is very right-wing, from the group, the closed group, and he wanted to suspend me. And then I think his legal advisors told him he cannot do it because this is, there are procedures for that. And then I said that and then he wrote a letter that I'm a terrorist supporter, and then I justified the murder and so on and so forth, put it in my file, personal file. And I said, if he doesn't take it out, I will not come back to work. And he didn't take it out, and I did not come back to work. That's the whole story. Well, there is more to that, but I was summoned to the police after that and things like that, with some story about a video that I uploaded, where I praise the murderers and curse the Israeli soldiers. And I said, where is the video? And the investigator said, the video is gone, but people saw it. What people? Cannot tell you. But then he said, forget it, go home. He didn't really know who he's talking to. But there was a whole, and the far right journals wrote horrible things about me and so on and so forth. But now it's quiet, and this is it.
Do you have other examples of Israeli
Other
academics
things.
who were silenced?
Yeah. There are teachers who were fired. There is another Shalhuv from the Hebrew University who was slandered and treated terribly by the university and so on. Yeah, but especially teachers, school teachers, both Arab and Jews. Of course, the Arabs had much harder time than the Jews, but yeah, and it's going on. It's still going on. Now there is a case of another teacher. And they go back to what somebody wrote on his Facebook years ago to do that. Yeah, the Minister of Education asked for names. Give me names. They give me names like, McCarthy. So I was one of the names, let's say. And yeah, the atmosphere is very, very, very heavy. Very, yeah.
Yeah. There's one, if I still may, yeah. There's one thought in my mind. Yeah, so Israel and other countries go more and more to the right. Yeah, but Israel is an extreme example. But don't people realize that sooner or later the right-wing government will turn against them too?
It already does, because it doesn't bring back the kidnapped, and they don't care about the people who lost their homes and their works and everything. I think this is one of the realizations, the hard realizations of people here, because they always thought that these people who are so ruthless towards Palestinians would be protective towards them. And now they realize that they are as ruthless, not as, but they are ruthless towards them as well. But, yeah.
Because you said the hostages, yeah, there's still
The
101.
hostages and the people, as I told you, who lost their lives with no way, no homes, no work, no livelihood. Nobody helps them. Nobody cares. And this is something people did not anticipate.
Yeah, and if you say people, to make it again very black and white, which segment of Israel's population do you mean with the people?
Everybody, I think,
Everybody.
it's the realization that this is what is going on.
Yeah. Is it true? I really saw some staggering numbers, but I have no way of confirming. Yeah, is it true that virtually hundreds of thousands of Israelis left Israel since October the 7th?
It may be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Nurit, you were very generous with your time. Is there anything that we didn't discuss, what you would like to add?
No, it's all right.
May I ask you, what is your husband doing professionally?
My husband, well, he's retired also, but he was a graphic designer, and then he was the CEO of the Family Forum, Palestinian and Israeli Bereaved Families, the organization, I believe. And now he's very active in this line. He's not the CEO anymore. And he travels all over the world with a Palestinian partner. And the Pope invited them twice this year. Yeah, I was very impressed by them. And there's a very known and full of prizes and awards book that was written about them. It's called A Paragon. You can read it. And this is what he does.
Okay. You spiked my interest. I might come back to you on that one.
No.
Okay.
Look for A Paragon.
Good.
My character there is not true, because I did not cooperate with the writer, so he made up some character. But they did cooperate. I mean, he was here for 5 years, and he really,
Okay.
people say it's a great book.
Can you repeat the author?
Kala McCann.
Paragon.
Yeah, he's a very known author. Irish, lives in America, he teaches in America. Yeah, very, very known, as he's very awarded. He has a lot of prizes. And this book was translated to, I don't know how many languages, 20 something.
Okay.
Also to Italian, and the Pope read it. That's the point.
What a story.
Yeah.
Okay.
He invited them twice.
Will he go?
No, they already went. If you Google my husband, Rami Elhanan, you'll find the whole story about the Pope.
I will.
Yeah.
Nurit, thank you very much for your time. It's really appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into SaltCube Analytics. We hope today's episode gave you something to think about and challenged the way you see the world. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe or follow us and leave a review or a comment. Your feedback helps us keep questioning the status quo. For more insights and discussions, follow us on YouTube, Rumble, TikTok, Twitter, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or any of your other preferred podcast platforms. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and remember, always look beyond the headlines.